ਸ੍ਰੀ ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਸਾਹਿਬ ਜੀਓ। ਇੱਕ ਓੰਕਾਰ ਸਤ ਗੁਰ ਪ੍ਰਸਾਦ। ਰਾਗ ਦੇਵ ਗੰਧਾਰੀ ਮਹੱਲਾ ਨੌਵਾਂ। ਯੇ ਮਨ ਨੈਕ ਨਾ ਕਹਿਓ ਕਰੈ, ਸੀਖ ਸਿਖਾਏ ਰਹਿਓ ਆਪਣੀ ਸੀ। ਦੁਰਮਤ ਤੇ ਨਾ ਟਰੈ ਰਹਾਓ। ਯੇ ਮਨ ਨੈਕ ਨਾ ਕਹਿਓ ਕਰੈ, ਸੀਖ ਸਿਖਾਏ ਰਹਿਓ ਆਪਣੀ ਸੀ। ਦੁਰਮਤ ਤੇ ਨਾ ਟਰੈ ਰਹਾਓ। ਮਦ ਮਾਇਆ ਕੈ ਭਇਓ ਬਾਵਰੋ, ਹਰ ਜਸ ਨਹਿ ਉਚਰੈ। ਕਰ ਪਰਪੰਚ ਜਗਤ ਕਉ ਡਹਿਕੈ, ਆਪਨੋ ਉਦਰ ਭਰੈ। ਸਵਾਨ ਪੂਛ ਜੋ ਹੋਏ ਨਾ ਸੂਦੋ, ਕਹਿਓ ਨਾ ਕਾਨ ਧਰੈ। ਕਹੋ ਨਾਨਕ ਭਜ ਰਾਮ ਨਾਮ ਨਿਤ, ਜਾਤੇ ਕਾਜ ਸਰੈ। ਕਹੋ ਨਾਨਕ ਭਜ ਰਾਮ ਨਾਮ ਨਿਤ, ਜਾਤੇ ਕਾਜ ਸਰੈ। ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕਾ ਖਾਲਸਾ, ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕੀ ਫਤਿਹ। ਸੰਗਤ ਜੀ, today's Hukamnama is on Ang 536 from Sri Harmandir Sahib, Sachkhand Sri Harmandir Sahib, and it's by Guru Tegh Bahadur Ji Ji today in Rag Dev Gandhari. Guru Sahib Ji, here we start off with the Mangla Charan of Ek Onkar Sat Guru Prasad. Prasad meaning Kirpa, grace, that with the grace of the Sat Guru, with the Guru of truth, we can have union with Ek, with that one where we have all come from. So today Guru Tegh Bahadur Ji is blessing us with this upadesh, with their teachings, with this awareness about ourselves. And the awareness that Guru Tegh Bahadur Ji give us is that they tell us about the patterns of some of our minds, of what's happened, some of the wiring that's happened within our brain. Talking about, and I'm sure many of us can actually relate to this, where we tell our mind that, you know what, I want to do this, I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna stop doing this, I'm not gonna do this particular thing anymore, but it doesn't listen, and it still ends up doing that exact thing that you've been telling your mind, no, I don't want to do that. So it means that our mind becomes the master. Our mind starts to control us. And the mind, because only when the mind instructs this body, then this body acts. So let's listen to Guru Tegh Bahadur Ji. They say, Yeh man naik na kahyo karai. Saying Yeh man, this mind of mine. Naik means at all. Yeh man naik na kahyo karai. It doesn't do anything that I instruct it to do. So I say to it that, you know what, I'm not going to go on, I'm not going to use my social media anymore during this period, this time of my day, but it doesn't listen. But I've said to it, like even the day before, I said, all right, tomorrow's a new day, and in the day, during work hours, during such and such hours, I'm not going to use it. But Guru Sahib Ji saying, Yeh man naik na kahyo kare, but it doesn't do anything that I ask it to do. And then I might have replaced that and said to my mind that, you know what, tomorrow, instead, that time, when I do have that little time out, I'm going to replace that for exercising. But then when it comes to that time, I still end up doing exactly what I said I'm not going to do, and then exactly what I said to the mind that I am going to do, it didn't happen. My mind didn't listen to me. So I'm sure so many people can actually relate to this. So he said it's not listening to me. ਕਹਿੰਦੇ ਸੀਖ ਸਿਖਾਏ ਰਹਿਓ ਆਪਣੀ ਸੀ. And over here, what Pachaji is saying here to us, Guru Tegh Bahadur Ji, Reheo here means that I've gotten tired. I've worn myself out in trying to seek, in trying to teach this mind, in trying to instruct this mind. Can they seek Sikhai? Can they no Sakonda? Can they trying to instruct it, trying to teach it? Seek Sikhai, Reheo. Can they I'm just shattered now. I just don't know what to do now. ਕਹਿਣ ਲੱਗੇ ਤਾਂ ਕਹਿੰਦੇ ਕਿ ਰਹਿਓ ਆਪਣੀ ਸੀ. ਕਹਿੰਦੇ from what am I trying to instruct it and what am I trying to teach it? ਕਹਿੰਦੇ ਦੁਰਮਤ ਤੇ ਨਾ ਟਰੈ. And durmat can mean that even though a lot of this, I've said this before Sangat, to the Sangat, and that we'll see this translated to evil-mindedness, and then we shouldn't, you know, because most of us, the way we probably relate to that word evil is evil being something quite extreme. So let's remove that word from our mind, evil. Over here, when Satguruji Pachaji is talking about Durmat is that type of mat, is that type of mind when it starts to think negative. And Durmat te na tarai, saying I'm not able to get away from certain patterns. And this could be something not maybe so extreme. It could be bad habits as well. It could be something like smoking. It could be something intoxicating ourselves. It could be speaking harsh words to someone. And so as soon as when I read the word evil, I just start thinking things like murder and rape, but it doesn't have to be as extreme as that. And I'm sure not everyone has the connotation with that word in that way. But so Durmat, negative actions. Tenatare, it's not stopping from any form of negative actions. And then some of these things might not even be so negative, so they actually might be okay, but just at the right time. But when they start to control us, it starts to become a problem. It starts to become Durmat, because another translation to Durmat can be Dur Mat. So something that takes me away from the Guru's way of life. Meaning, so something that I actually want to do something more positive with my time during that time. So we've just used the example of social media. So we all know it can be very positive. But then if it's something that starts to consume us and we can't get away from it, and it's taken us away from practicing our dharam, practicing our faith, or even helping around at home and spending more time with the kids, then we know it's become durmat for us. Something that is taking us away from our everyday living and life and our practice of our faith. Na tara rahao. Then Guru Tegh Bahadur Ji Pachaji ਕਹਿਣ ਲੱਗੇ, ਕਹਿੰਦੇ what's happened to me? ਕਹਿੰਦੇ ਮਦ ਮਾਇਆ ਕੇ ਭਇਓ ਬਾਵਰੋ. ਕਹਿੰਦੇ mad can be literally translated to the intoxicant. It's also used for anything that gives you masti. Masti means that gives you a buzz, that makes you intoxicated. But mad can actually mean the intoxication as well. So when we're actually intoxicated. So here mad the dadda's got a sihari, so saying that with that intoxication, what are you here now intoxicated with? Kende mad maya. Intoxicated in maya, in the maya of what? Here we'll translate maya to my ego. I'm intoxicated in my ego and pride. And what's that done to me? My own ego has made me crazy. So what happens is that my own ego, what I kind of identify myself with and as, and thinking that I'm greater than others and wanting to be at the top. And they said this chase of wanting to be above everybody else and wanting everyone to recognize me, and then you've gone mad in this intoxication of your I-ness, and you haven't even harjasa, the praise of Waheguruji nehe uchare. You've not once even praised Waheguruji. It's all become about you, forgetting that Waheguruji is giving you the strength, Waheguruji is giving you the breath, Waheguruji is giving you your intellect, that, remember, we haven't got control over our intellect. Let's just think about this. It's very logic. So remember, like, there's some people, doesn't matter at school, doesn't matter how much effort they put in, but there's other students that can put a lot less effort in, but it just clicks for them and it's just there. And that's for multiple reasons. That could be due to their genes, due to what they've been exposed to, their past lives, or whatever it may be. And so we know that they clock onto things a lot easier. So things the understanding of something comes to them a lot easier, because that is kirpa. That's called kirpa. Kirpa, I don't mean where Waheguru is blessing someone and looking at them in the way of like favoring them. So I don't think that Waheguru is favoring them. It just means, when we say grace is something that we have no control over, and when it's something, a separate entity, power, that is giving us that Shakti, that giving us that power. So we know we've got no control over that, have we? To say that how intelligent, yes, there's obviously things that we can do to help ourselves, to build a sharper intellect, but ultimately it's in the hands of Waheguruji, in the hands of the Karta, the doer. So Pachaji is saying, you've gone mad thinking it's all you, but not remembering Harjas to praise that one that's blessed you with all these gifts. So sometimes what we think is that when we say Harjas, we start thinking about that it only means to do kirtan with a form of saj, whether it be a saj meaning an instrument, be a vajja, be a harmonium, or be a rabab. Well, there's not many people that use a rabab nowadays, but dil rabab is more commonly used. So stringed instruments. But that was our practice, and that was our bhakti and devotional worship. But to be constantly in Harjas is taking the eye away from me. And he's praising Waheguruji. Look, Waheguruji, it's your kirpa that I've got this way of being able to understand something. If it wasn't for you, I wouldn't be able to understand it, because there's somebody else that is reading the same text as me. We're both reading the same thing, but one person's getting it and one person's not. So what is it? It's called kirpa, Harjas, always remaining in praise of Waheguruji. And then Pachaji Guru Tegh Bahadur Ji Pachaji saying, Kende ke kar par panch means when you put on a show. So you actually trying to be someone in front of someone else that you're actually not. So we know this happens many of times, that people are putting this big show on just for the world, but they're actually something completely different. And this happens so much for people that are famous and that people follow, that they've got a perception of, oh wow, what must this person be like? And then they actually try and uphold that side of themselves, and they put this show on for the rest of the world. But they might go behind closed doors and they're a completely different person. So somebody might be in front of the world that might come across very humorous, might be constantly making jokes, and everyone sees this person to be so bubbly, but behind closed doors they might be completely different. They might be broken from inside. They struggle to even speak and communicate. So, but this is, Parpanch here is talking more about when you're actually deceiving the world just for the sake of that you can. Dehke means you deceive the world. You're deceiving the world and coming across as something else. So that could be something like somebody is putting a pretense on to be religious. So somebody will put certain clothes on just to come across to the world that they are a religious person. But then Pachikanda, you're actually deceiving the world. What for? And the purpose behind it for you, your only intention is apanu udar par. Udar means stomach. That all you want to do is fill your udar, meaning belly. That you're just thinking about what you're going to get out of it. And meaning you're just doing it out of money. You're doing it out of money for your family. Whatever it may be, you're filling your belly in a way that you just want fame out of it. But you're actually fooling people. You're actually not that at all what you're making out to be. So something that just reminded me about this, but it's not, this person wasn't doing it out of any bad intentions, but just to put out there to the Sangat that trying to not just assume something about people because we just don't know. And there's this famous person that does many different shows on television, and I can't remember her full name, but maybe I think her first name is Ruby something. And something that I could really relate to at one point in my life, and I remember her doing an interview and saying that she was suffering with depression. It was so intense that she was actually in a hospital. So she was there in an actual mental institute, but she still needed to survive. Obviously, she didn't want to completely break off all the contracts that she's got as well. And for whatever reasons that she may not have even shared, or that I may not remember as well. But so imagine that she was actually in a hospital due to her mental health because her depression was so bad, and she could not get out of bed, and even having a shower was like climbing a mountain. And those of you that can relate to this, you'll know that there's this something you can watch on YouTube is called The Black Dog, and it's like carrying this cloud, and it's like taking each step is like so heavy. So for her it's like climbing this mountain. But every so often, whilst in this situation, she'd get ready, and it might have taken her 3 hours or 4 hours to even get into a shower, to even comb her hair. But somehow she would make it once in a while, maybe once in a month or whenever it was, to a studio, actually record a show. And she was known to be quite humorous. She was known to be quite a comedian. She would then record this show, and the whole world would be seeing her for what they could see her on the screen, and then she would actually go back to the hospital, to the mental health hospital. And this pankti reminded me of this, that kar par panch jagat ko dehke. And even though I know this is more in a negative way, that you're deceiving the world, but sometimes it might seem as if we're deceiving the world, but we just try and do the best in that situation of whatever it is. So because we have to fill our stomachs, and it might seem, yes, that in that way, yes, it might be deceiving the world, but it's more about, it's so we can become more conscious and understand people for what they actually might be going through, or what they actually are. And even if somebody is intentionally deceiving someone, if we look deeper into it, there will be a deeper reason and for why they're actually doing that. And they're actually normally suffering, but they might not be conscious to that, to why they're reacting that way, and why they're actually fooling the world. But they are those as well that are just outright greedy and just want money and are out there to just rip people off. So we're going to be very careful of those. So Pachaji saying here, kende swan pooch jo hoye na sudo. And this was a very popular saying in Punjabi. Kende eta kende kutte di pooch wangu a. And basically that might sound a bit raw, but basically that's what Guru Tegh Bahadur Ji is saying here. What does it mean? So I had that said to me loads from my parents. So I know somebody even made a comment to say these Punjabi kahavtan, these Punjabi sayings really make it relatable, these kathas. And Guru Sahib Ji used them. Kende swan means dog, and pooch means tail. Kende swan pooch jo hoye na sudo. Kende just like kende eta and kende kutte di pooch ya. And then what that actually means is, they're saying, like obviously all dogs have got a slightly differently shaped tail. And what we probably don't realize is that even our spine, it's not completely straight. It's got a little curve to it. In that way, there's a lot of dogs, their tails have got a little curve to it. And some are more obviously curled, and some might not be so obvious. And what they saying was ek kahavat hundi si Punjabi vich, so they would say kende ke 12 saal kende pooch banni kende par kholi te kende odda di odda kende 12 years we actually tied we tried to straighten this dog's tail and we tied it up. And you know what, I was thinking that this saying can't just come out of nowhere, like the 12 years thing. Somebody must have tried it. They must have actually tied a dog's tail for like 12 years and then opened it and it was still curved when it opened it. So they're saying that some people, they just don't change their ways. And even though I've tried to instruct the mind so many times, you just don't change. You're like that dog's tail, that no matter what, you just remain in that way, and you're not coming out of those, you're not breaking out of those negative patterns that you're stuck in. Swan pooch jo hoye na sudo, keheo na kaan tara, keheo, whatever is said and gone into my, isn't going into my inside. Kaan means through my ears, and tare, and isn't being instilled inside of me. Because I don't stop, I'm not getting out of those cycles that I'm stuck in. So now this is quite a serious situation for a lot of us. And yes, it might sound like a bit of a raw kind of saying, kutte di pooch wangu, that like it does, this person, well, we hear these things that they're not going to change. But sometimes what we need to understand is, why is it that somebody isn't changing even though they want to? So we've got to understand how habits actually form and how habits actually work. So if we look at general psychology, they will give us ways of how to recognize a bad habit and then recognize the patterns of it, become conscious of it, and then how to then replace it with a good habit. So for most of us, that's all good. Obviously, yes, it'll be great to form good habits, but ultimately the path of enlightenment, the path of realization, is to become above both of them, is to do everything in our life consciously and not. So it's okay, obviously it's better to have to be in a good habit than a bad habit, but ultimately we want to be living our life when we're ultimately conscious about everything that we're doing. But we've got to work with where we are. So most of us will be experiencing that we're in a loop of a habit. So first of all, we've got to become conscious of how that habit pattern works. So if you look at the psychology behind it, it's normally split up into 4 different parts. And the first part of this whole kutte di pooch means this, why isn't it changing and it's just is in this habit, is that first is cue. And cue means is what triggers something inside of us. So for example, so I'll use things that I've starting to recognize that I've done in my life and may still be doing, but is now recognizing what's the pattern that's happening in my brain. So for example, that if I'm learning katha and I'm looking through the artha and the translations of something, but it might be quite challenging and it's quite difficult, maybe there's a line that I'm just not getting. So for you that could be you could be doing your work, your uni work, you're working on your degree or your GCSEs, or that could be your actual work where that could be anything. You make it relatable to yourself, whatever that work that could be for you, that could be quite challenging. So there was that one time we would have done this where it's become quite stressful, and then we've thought, oh wait there, let me just have a break. And then when you have your break, what you do is you actually go on social media. So you just started to stroll down Facebook during that time you've just had it out, because you just felt it was difficult. But it was justified because you said it's a break. And then what's happened is, so you've got a bit of a kick out of it. So out of Facebook, why? Because you saw that a few people have liked something of your post, and that made you feel good. And then eventually, then you come back to your work. So without realizing, you might have done that a few times unconsciously, And without realizing, it's actually formed a pattern in our brain, a habit. Because what we're doing is, when we're functioning at a certain level and we're not functioning at a higher level where we're functioning consciously all the time and we're in control, and where most of us are functioning, what happens is this brain is constantly looking for pleasure. It's constantly looking for rewards, something that we enjoy and where we can feel good and to be satisfied. But even though that satisfaction is so short-lived, but we don't realize it's short-lived, so because we're unconscious. So what happens is that gave us a bit of time out, but then it gave us a bit of a kick. It gave us that short-lived satisfaction of when we saw, oh wow, look, somebody actually, I've got a few more people following me now. They actually, such and such person liked it as well. And that was the kick. Not realizing we've just formed a pattern. So now what happens is, it goes into 4 stages. First is the cue. So first is, I feel stuck, and now it starts happening more and more often. The moment I say, oh, this is a bit hard work. So that stress, and that stress for you can be anything. Put it into your own situation, that stress. So now I feel stressed, oh, this is hard. And then what happens is, that becomes my cue, that becomes my trigger. And then, sorry Sangaji, and just got an eyelash gone into my eye. And then what happens is, that trigger, it becomes then a craving. And the craving is the desire. Then the desire is, oh, I'll go on Facebook. Most people are on Instagram now, so it might be Instagram, whatever relates to you, okay? So, and then you think, oh, Facebook, Instagram. And that becomes your craving. I want to now get. Why is that your craving? Because it actually gave you a reward. It's not the actual. And then the third part is called response. Response is when you actually respond to your craving, and you could call it giving into it. But at that point, you're not thinking you're giving in because it's all unconscious. And then response is the actual, you go on to actual Facebook. Going on to Facebook isn't what is your driving factor. That's not what gives you the kick. The kick is the reward that you got from it, the satisfaction you got from it. That's what you're chasing. So then you go from that craving, then you go to the response, which is the action, but it's actually for the reward. And then it gives you these little rewards for it. And then before you know it, you formed a habit now. Your brain is looking for, oh, I want a bit of a kick. I want a bit of a reward. I want satisfaction. And what we don't realize is that satisfaction is so short-lived. And now these habits are not necessarily so difficult to actually break out of. What is difficult is if that very habit then turns into an addiction. How do we know something's become an addiction? There's a few signs to look out for. One of the signs is now it's started to actually directly or indirectly, it's starting to impact your life in some form of way. It's starting to impact your relationships with your partner, with your children. It's started to impact your work. That could be a sign of now this habit's actually turned into more of an addiction. The second thing is you've made attempts to actually stop it and you're not able to. So that's another sign. And then another sign is there's normally 4 to 5. There's about 5 common ones. Another one is that you're starting to have withdrawal symptoms. And one of those withdrawal symptoms, obviously, if we know it's drugs or alcohol, it can actually be physical and it can be quite dangerous for you as well. So that could be sweating or shaking. So we was obviously using the examples of social media, which isn't so extreme. You've got to put it into your own situation, which isn't so extreme. It's not really likely that you're going to see any of those physical symptoms appear. But what you will get is you'll start to get more stressed, and you might even start feeling a bit of anxiousness. You might start feeling a bit of anxiety, and you've not experienced it before. And that's because now that's a form of withdrawal symptom when you're trying to keep away from something. So these are things. And then another important one is you and the response is called the behavior. So what happens is then we start to try and hide that behavior from someone, and that's when you know it's dangerous grounds now. It's turning into an addiction, which is a lot more difficult to break. We may even need now professional help if it becomes a serious risk to our lives. And then so we're starting to hide that behavior from someone could be quite a sign for it becoming an addiction. Alright, so now we need to look at Satguru Ji Paatshah Ji gives us here a way out. So they say to us, Kaho Nanak, that Guru Tegh Bahadur Ji Paatshah is saying to us, can they Bhaj Ram Naam, can they meditate on God's name when? Can they nit all the time? Can they Jate Kaj Sare, and that will actually resolve all your issues and problems. Easier said than done. Because doesn't this come back to what we said in the beginning, where we might be saying that yeh mana nak na kahe aur kare, it's not doing anything I'm instructing it to do. So I'm saying that yes, mind, you get up in the morning and meditate. So, but it's not listening to me. Morning comes, I even wake up, then I think, nah, a bit more sleep. Nah, forget that. And then I've done that job, even though I want to do this, but why isn't this becoming my good habit? So even though, like I said, we want to go to a place of higher consciousness, but at least in the beginning, we need to form some good habits. How do we do that? One of the ways is, and remember, there's no set way, but these are things that have commonly been proven to work. Okay, so to break out of a negative habit, which could be first is trying to get rid of the cue, trying to get rid of that trigger. So something that triggers makes us, so for example, for someone where their phone, just looking at their phone is their trigger. So then what it is that we might have to remove that trigger. For somebody, their trigger is as soon as their phone goes ding, or it goes vibrates, and then that becomes our craving to I need to check the message, you know. And then the response is you check the message. Once you've checked the message, then you get the reward. You feel satisfied. Oh yes, and now I know that piece of information. So we might have to originally, to get rid of the bad habit, the negative habit, we might have to get rid of the trigger. So putting your phone on night mode, where it doesn't actually, when you know you've got to focus and concentrate, you might need to put your phone on where it doesn't tell you when a message is actually come up. So then you get rid of the trigger, and then you make it, whatever it is, you're going to make it more difficult for yourself. So then you might still, there's less opportunity of having the craving now. But if the craving still comes about, even though there's no trigger, because your mind might be saying, because you've got a bit stressed and you're thinking, I might have a message, but I won't know because it's on silent, it's on night mode. So then what you need to do is, they say, make the next step, the response, you need to make it more difficult for yourself to actually reach out to. So you might have put your phone in a place where it's more difficult for you to get to, or it might be that now you've put a certain, so you've actually completely, what I used to do is, I used to actually delete the app, making it more difficult for me to get into it. So I know that now responding, I'd have to go back to browser, I have to actually go onto now the website, Facebook, and now I have to actually put in all my details and actually sign in. So whatever you need to do, make it more difficult for yourself. And that way, then obviously the reward isn't there yourself, and you'll start to then realize actually the reward was very short-lived. That's why I'm doing all of this anyway. How do you form then the new habit of the positive habit? Means to make the cue, make the sign that what you need to do very obvious. Okay, so it might be, so you want to meditate in the morning and you need to make your trigger very obvious. Okay, so that could be, remember it's a cycle, and I'll explain how the cycle works in a minute. So when you wake up, you might need something right in front of you because you've done some form of meditation before, and you've enjoyed it, you've had the rewards from it, and you're thinking, this has made me feel so calm, you know, this is beautiful. And then so what you might need to do is put something on at your bedside, that when you do wake up, that you see something that reminds you of that meditation. Maybe it might even be a picture or something where it's you yourself sitting there and you're blissed out in Kirtan somewhere or something, or put anything there that become your cue. And then that can then trigger that desire for wanting to meditate, because you've enjoyed moments of bliss from it as well. So then once you've got that craving for it, that desire for it, then you need to make it easy. You need to make it really something that you can get to. So in the beginning, it might be that you just get up in your bed and you just close your eyes and then you just say Vaheguru a few times. So then your response, you've got to make it really accessible. Or the other way to do it is to make it really easy for you to access, that you've got to then make it really appealing to you. So wherever you are going to sit and meditate, make sure you make it really beautiful. Put a few fresh flowers there. Get some really new beautiful candles. Do a really nice vishai there. Put something down like a sheet there that is really nice, and a nice fragrance there. So it starts making you think of how that feels. You're now craving the reward. You're craving that, I can't wait to go and sit there. You got to make it seductive for yourself to form that good habit. And then we've got to get to the point of where we actually do everything consciously, and where we're in control of that mind. So Sangat Ji, for us for now, we just need to know the patterns of how to form the good habit, and that in itself is important and powerful enough for us. So hopefully we can all take something away from this. And Sadhguru Ji Paat Ji, let's just read the last two pangtiyan and then say Fateh. Swan pooch jo hoye na sudo, kahyo na kaan tara. So Sangat Ji, just one thing I remembered, that for that dog it might be impossible for the tail to become completely straight, but it's not impossible for us. That is just saying don't be like that dog. Okay, it's saying, but for as a human being, we can break out of these patterns. So swan pooch jo hoye na sudo, kahyo na kaan tara, kaho nanak bhaj ram naam nit, jate kaaj sara. Vaheguru Ji ka Khalsa, Vaheguru Ji ki Fateh.